We are back at it.
You expect to not get your teeth kicked in on your home field by Tulsa.
This is not the 1980s OSU.
Zack Robinson, a lot of time going deep for Des Bryant. He's open. Diving catch. Touchdown, Oklahoma State.
We are back at it. Welcome back to another edition of the Pistols Firing Podcast. I'm Carson Cunningham, joined as always by Colby Powell. Colby, we had a fascinating game against Baylor to discuss, but we're recording this on Sunday. Thank you for joining us. Colby, how you doing on this Sunday?
I'm doing great. It was a good Saturday. I mean, unless you're a golf fan, and we don't have to get into that. By the way, before singles starts, I would like to go back on my prediction that the USA is still going to win. I'm going to turn that around. I'm going to pick the Europeans at this point. So I'd like to take my prediction back there. But, yeah, Carson, I didn't get the score right, but I kind of feel like I nailed my prediction of the game. Oklahoma State played loose. They played with pride. They hung around for a while. Baylor pulled away. But I've never been so happy to watch a 45-27 home loss.
That felt like an Oklahoma State football game, did it not? I mean, high scoring, no defense. It was like we had our program back. We had OSU football and the viewing experience that we know and love back in the fall. Was that not just a vintage Oklahoma State game? Gosh, it felt good to put points on the board and just at least have a fight and just have, like, OSU fans are used to losing and scoring a lot of points, although I guess it felt like a lot compared to what we're used to, I guess, in the most recent years. But no, it felt like watching an OSU football game, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, a lot, a little, it's all relative, right? So relative to what we've been used to for the last 11 games against FBS opponents, that was a lot. Carson, Oklahoma State had 22 first downs yesterday. 22 first downs. Oklahoma State was driving at the end of the first half. ESPN throws up a graphic, total yards. Oklahoma State, 307. Baylor, 245. I had to do a double take to make sure that was right. 307. Where did 307 come from? I started thinking about it. I'm like, well, it came from Sam Jackson and Zane Flores and Trent Howland and Rodney Fields. I mean, it was really fun to watch, and it gives me hope that this team, I mean, at least be good enough that you can evaluate your talent. Maybe Zane has a chance to develop into something. Maybe he can actually play a little bit of football. I was so pleased with what I saw yesterday, and I'm sure somebody somewhere will make fun of Oklahoma State fans for celebrating an 18-point loss. If you are, you don't understand what we've been going through for the last calendar year and how refreshing what we saw yesterday, especially for about the first 2.5, 3 quarters, was. It was so much different, and, man, it was a joy.
It really was. And, you know, we speculated how loose, how different the offense would look and all of those things. And we're going to get to that. And we're going to get to just how and why things could look so much different and just how the game played out. Of course, the second half wasn't nearly as much fun as the first half, which we'll get to as well. But first, let's hear from Chris's University Spirit, your one-stop Cowboy shop. Be sure to shop at chrisuniversityspirit.com. We appreciate Chris's being a long-time, and I mean long-time, sponsor of the show. All day, every day, free standard shipping on orders over $75. You know where to find them at 244 South Knobloch Street in Stillwater. You know, I lived off of Knobloch, you know, where the old Charlie's Chicken used to be. We had a house back there at one point. I could walk straight to the journalism building from there. Reminds me of my time in Stillwater, seeing Knobloch on there. So you know where to find them. Chris's University Spirit. They sponsored this podcast for many, many years, and we're so appreciative of them. And really just a great local business there in Stillwater, which you want to support. So you can see right there on their website, they've got everything you need. Clothes, shirts, pennants, tailgating gear. Chris's is the place to shop. Your one-stop Cowboy shop. Colby, let's just start with Big Meech. Doug Meacham. You know, when they hired him, you and I talked a lot about what he could bring to the table offensively. He's been a proven coordinator over his time. Hasn't called plays for 4 years like Todd Grantham, who we'll get to. But he apparently hasn't forgotten how to call plays. And he certainly hasn't forgot all of the trick plays that are up his sleeves, because 3 different Cowboys in the first half attempted a pass. If you and I had been together watching this game, I think you and I would have been hugging and jumping up and down when we saw 4 wide on one side of the field. Was this not every single thing you and I have been asking for offensively? I mean, Rodney Fields had a carry for 32 yards on their first series. That had to be I kept listening to the radio hoping that Dave and John would mention how, like, if that was the longest play from scrimmage in like 2 years. Had to be close. But just from the jump, the trick plays are creative and they're awesome, and those do have a shelf life to them. But for me, it was so much more than about just the trick plays. It was the scheming, the motion. I mean, how much motion did they run to open up the running game? Like, it was night and day difference from what we've seen for the last 5, 6, 7 years, was it not?
It was unbelievable to watch in the first half. And look, I've been on the verge of losing my voice for about a week, so I'm really going to try not to yell on this podcast today. But what we saw in that first half was clearly the handcuffs being taken off the Oklahoma State offense. The handcuffs had been on for a while, and Dave Aranda alluded to it. I'll get to Dave Aranda's quotes in a little bit. I want to talk more about Meechum and what we saw early in that game. First of all, the Sam Jackson element. The Sam Jackson element is something that has clearly been underused the first 3 games of the season. When I say underused, I mean not used. Nothing is working. Literally a 0 from everything on your offense. And you've got a guy who runs a 4-4, 4-5, who can also sling it, who you're just not using at all. So the involvement of Sam Jackson was a big, big deal. And while the trick plays, like you said, have a shelf life, the Sam Jackson at quarterback, I don't know that does have a shelf life. I think that is something that you can continue to use 10 to 15 times a game the rest of the season to give defenses a different look, make them defend something different, even if it's something as simple as the last drive of the first half. This is all fresh in my mind. We had a balloon festival to go to yesterday and stuff. I watched the game going to bed last night. The last drive of the first half, Sam Jackson lines up on a 3rd and 4. Oklahoma State's at like their own 30-yard line. 3rd and 4. Sam Jackson in the shotgun, takes the snap. He rolls right as if he's going to pass. He's looking down the field, but when you look at the replay, and they showed it, they talked about it on the broadcast, everyone downfield is just blocking. He's just making it look like a pass. It was a designed run the whole way. There's tons of space out there. It's an easy 10 yards. There's another play with Sam Jackson in the shotgun. He takes the snap, and it's just a simple toss play to Trent Howland, who gets the corner because the defense has to respect the element that Sam Jackson brings. I think, if anything, we're going to see more Sam Jackson as the season goes on, not less Sam Jackson, because that's a new element that the defense has to contend with. And you know what all of those things do, Carson? They slow the defense down. Baylor's defense didn't know who was going where, which way the ball was coming from. Baylor had to really think about what was happening, what Oklahoma State was doing offensively, and that's something that Oklahoma State's opponents have not had to deal with. We've talked about this. Oklahoma State has been so easy to defend because you can predict exactly what's coming. You have to defend 2, maybe 3 things. And Baylor was sitting back in their too high shell. They've got some of their own problems defensively that they're going to have to address if they're just going to insist on sitting back in that too high shell. But Oklahoma State wasn't predictable on offense. It slowed the defense down. It opened up some running lanes. That same drive at the end of the first half, 3rd and 8. And people are probably thinking, what are you doing running it on 3rd and 8? But did you see the scheme on the run play? It was a tight end offset on the right side of the line of scrimmage. The tight end, the right tackle, the right guard, and the center, they all kick left at the snap. What do the left guard and the left tackle do? Boom! guard, tackle, pull. Guard, tackle, pull, and because you've been doing so many other things in the first half, because Zane took off a couple of times, the defensive end on the left side of the formation, Oklahoma State's left, didn't come crashing down super hard. So now all of a sudden the guard and tackle pull, they take the right defensive end. Left defensive end doesn't crash down hard enough. Howland's up the middle for 12 yards. I mean, Carson, take the handcuffs off the offense. It was amazing just how simple yet effective and elegant and amazing what Doug Meacham was doing was. It was a real offense. We can really evaluate Oklahoma State's talent now. These aren't bums, Carson. They were made to look like bums because of the offense that clearly was what was Mike Gundy's doing. I mean, it's very obvious that was the case. So big shout out to Meechum. Carson, that was in 4 days. 3 days, really. I mean, Tuesday's a lost day. 4 days, he puts that in. We've got 2 months left. Let's see what this thing can look like.
No, it's incredibly valid, everything you said. I did point out that during the game, like he had a very limited week to put all this in, and someone tweeted me, you think he put all this in a few days? Yeah, I do, because we haven't seen anything remotely close. Not even just the play calling, but just the formations. Like, you mean to tell me they've had this just in the playbook the entire season, and they just, because Mike Gundy's not there, they decide to run them? I mean, I do think there's an element of that, obviously, but based on their offense. But you can't tell me that this is a core part of what they've been practicing all year. You just can't. And one thing I really loved that Doug Meacham said during the game, or after the game in his post game, this quote really stood out to me, and it's everything you should be doing as an offensive coordinator and an offense, and they haven't been doing it for, again, 10 years practically, ever since Casey Dunn's been the offensive coordinator. He said, quote, "We wanted to create some anxiety for the defense." And I think what Oklahoma State's been doing for the last 10 years has been doing the exact opposite. They've made defenses completely comfortable. And I want to get to the Dave Aranda quote. I think you had it pulled up. Why don't you pull up that quote for us, and I'll let you go, because look, I don't want to pile on Mike Gundy. I don't want to make this all about Mike Gundy the rest of the season. But you got to admit, any OSU fan watching that game, you have to admit to yourself that game was a massive indictment on Mike Gundy and his offense, his stubbornness, his unwillingness to change, his unwillingness to do what's best for the football team and the players. I mean, their best players got the football. Trent Howland off the milk carton. Clearly your best running back in terms of inside the tackles. I love Rodney Fields. He's a great player too. That's your 1A, 1B. But that you throw that in, the Sam Jackson thing you mentioned, like Gundy was not pulling out all the stops to have a successful offense. Why? I don't know, but that's clear as day after watching that game.
Yeah, it's not a matter of not pulling out all of the stops. He wasn't pulling out any of the stops. That's the big problem I have. None of the stops were pulled out. Here's the Dave Aranda quote after the game, and this is pretty damning here from Mike Gundy. Dave Aranda said, "We felt watching them, everything was pretty self-contained and pretty simple, and today all that was blown up." He also went on, called Oklahoma State the most condensed and conservative offense they had scouted this year. Obviously, it was the most condensed and conservative offense they'd scouted all year. And like you said, Trent Howland, he's your best running back. Rodney Fields, really good player. Shout out to his performance yesterday. Great catch up the sideline. Had Zane hit him in stride on that one. Zane was under duress. He had stepped up. He had his momentum moving forward. I understand that. Overthrows him by maybe 2 yards. That's the difference in Rodney Fields walking into the end zone and having to make a diving play. He makes the diving play. But Trent Howland, he's got more speed than I thought, and he can bully people at the point of attack. And just – Carson, it is such an indictment on what Mike Gundy was doing with this offense. And I go back to the Oregon game, Carson, and after that game, Mike Gundy telling us that what they were doing, that the scheme was too complicated. They needed to simplify. They needed to simplify is what we were told after the Oregon game. They didn't need to simplify. They needed to do something that the defense didn't see coming. They needed to do something that was difficult to defend. They needed to do something other than an inside zone in between the guards. We saw all of it yesterday. We saw tosses. We saw guard tackle pulls. We saw Zane on keepers. It came back because of a hold, but how about Zane escaping the pocket, scrambling for 30 yards, hurdling a guy, and getting into the end zone? It's absolutely wild. Yesterday, I think, went as well for Oklahoma State as it could have gone, as well for Zane as it could have gone. Trent Howland, the players, they were obviously having fun. It's something to build on, even though it's a loss. It went as well for Doug Meacham as it possibly could have gone. Carson, it went as poorly for Mike Gundy as it possibly could have gone. And I honestly don't know. I mean, is he sitting at home watching that game thinking, oh, my God, how did I screw this up so bad? Or is he sitting at home just happy for Doug Meacham? I mean, Doug's his guy. Oklahoma State still his school. I still think Oklahoma State and Mike Gundy will have, a union at some point where he's able to come be on the field and lead the chant and sit up in a box. And I hope all those things happen. But, man, yesterday went about as bad as it could for Mike Gundy because it put on full display just how much he was holding this team back with the way he was coaching the last couple of years.
Oh, it's I'm not sure what to take away from that either. Like, Colby, can I put on my conspiracy Carson come out? I don't put my crazy fan hat on very often. That's just not the way I like to do the show. I'm really not a crazy fan. Like when they were getting just destroyed by Oregon, my wife was like, "Are you okay? Is this all right?" I'm fine. I'm not. OSU football does not affect my mood whatsoever. Maybe that's just from working in the media a long time. Now, of course, I want them to win, and I like that. that goes without saying. I've done a podcast for 10 years about OSU football. Clearly, I want them to win, but I don't let it affect my life and my personal life. But can I go conspiracy theory Carson and take off my journalism hat for a second? Can I do that for you?
Yes, you can. I think I know what you're going to say. I probably take the on-field stuff a little bit harder still at this point in my life than I should. I probably still get a little bit too emotional. Maybe it's just because things have gotten so bad, but I think I know what you're going to say, and I think it has something to do with $15 million. Go ahead.
Well, let me change the rundown here. Let me move down to number 2. Okay, we're good now. Okay, so again, I'm not reporting any of this. This is nothing but conspiracy theory Carson's opinion, okay? All the caveats here. Watching that game and the just complete difference of an offense attempting to score points. Is there a chance, even the slimmest of chances, that Mike Gundy was so pissed off about his contract situation last December and his feet being held to the fire and being told what to do, and how much I actually know that he wanted that buyout more than anything under the sun, is conspiracy theory Carson thinks Mike Gundy maybe was trying to get fired and didn't care if they lost games and was like, "You're going to have to fire me. I'm going to run out the same 5 to 7 plays. We're going to score 0 touchdowns for nearly 3 full games. I don't really count UT Martin. Two full games, rather." Is there a chance he wanted to just get fired because he was so mad, so stubborn, and so bitter and spiteful to the administration and everyone else that he was sabotaging the team? Because, and I say this half in mostly jest, of course, but how can you watch that game and not wonder? Because not only were they losing games, Colby, they were the worst offense in the entire country. They were the worst football team in the entire country. How else do you explain a team playing in the Big 12 championship 2 years ago, or a year ago, dating back to last year? How do you explain that team, with all the returning players they had last year, being the worst team in college football? Conspiracy theory Carson watched that game and said, Mike Gundy was trying to get fired. He was sabotaging the team.
Yeah, look, I'm not a conspiracy theory guy. I think we went to the moon. I don't think the government did 9/11. I'm not a conspiracy theory guy. But one of two things is true here, and it's really hard to make sense of, because Mike Gundy was such a good football coach for such a long time. Carson, we are about 13 months removed from In Gundy I Trust. In Gundy we trust. That's how far removed we are from that. Gundy was a really good football coach for a really long time. Carson, what happened this last month? What happened late last season, the last couple of months? It's one of two things. It's sabotage or it's incompetence. I hope it's not sabotage. I hope it's not sabotage. I don't think it is. I think Mike Gundy loves Oklahoma State. I think that he was putting in the hours, but obviously he wasn't doing everything he could do. I mean, obviously we've heard rumblings about the money, the lack thereof, the lack of his willingness to go get the money, and we've now seen the product on the field. And you can say, well, this was just a week one thing. Week one without your coach, you do a bunch of fun stuff, and then you kind of settle into base. I mean, I don't know, Carson. I told you last week, this team's going to win 2 more games this season. They're going to play inspired. They're going to win 2 more games this season. They might win 3 more games this season, 4 more games this season. I don't know. There are bad football teams left on this schedule. Baylor, not a bad football team. They narrowly lost to Arizona State last week. They turned the ball over 3 times, narrowly lost that game. Otherwise, they'd be 4-1, sitting pretty as one of the leading contenders in the Big 12. Baylor's a good football team. They didn't put up 600 yards of offense yesterday on accident. And we're going to get to Todd Grantham. I see it over there on the rundown. But Baylor's a good football team. This team is going to win a couple of games coming home the rest of the season. And, yeah, what happened yesterday was an indictment on Mike Gundy. If this team wins 4 or 5 games this season, it's an indictment on Mike Gundy. I don't think we're going to hear him talk anytime soon. We didn't get the statement this week that I thought we might get from Mike Gundy. I still hope at some point we get that. But, yeah, right now, I mean, I was getting texts yesterday. I'm sure you were getting texts yesterday. We were getting tweets yesterday. It's all intertwined. Everything about what happened yesterday is intertwined with Mike Gundy, with the way his career ended at Oklahoma State. And it makes his legacy in the now very tricky to navigate. And I'll be curious how we talk about him in 10 years, because it all contributes to the Mike Gundy legacy, to the bigger picture.
I'll take off my conspiracy theory hat here, Colby, again, and say that I don't think Mike Gundy was sabotaging his team, the players, his coaches that he brought in. It's just when you watch that game, it just makes you want, again, like going from like what Mike Gundy had built to the worst team in all of college football, and a roster that supposedly costs more money than Chad Weiber came out and said this was not an inexpensive roster. So it makes you question things, and that's the only reason I put on my conspiracy theory cap. But you're right. I mean, this is to me, the game was a big whether it's incompetence or sabotage, I don't really care. The game was a big indictment on Mike Gundy.
Yeah, and Carson, again, I don't think it was sabotage, but I do think, was it Einstein who said the definition, is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result? I mean, how many times was Mike Gundy prepared to just run the same offense out there? How many times was he prepared to say, yeah, concepts are fine, we just have to get better at what we do? How about what you're doing isn't working? Do something else. Do something different. He was unwilling to do that, Carson. So, again, there was no scenario in which we could come on this podcast today and not criticize Mike Gundy after what we watched yesterday. We don't have to continue to pile on, but, yeah, I'm just – after what we saw yesterday, I'm even more disappointed in what we saw. My parents were out of the country for a few weeks on vacation. They came back and, they were disappointed with the crowd yesterday. And I told them, like, it's become unwatchable. It's not that it's become a bad team, because we were talking about loyal and true and defining loyal and true. And I said that I think that applies to bad teams, not unwatchable teams. Oklahoma State had become an unwatchable football team. It wasn't an unwatchable football team we watched yesterday. I don't even know that was a bad football team that we watched yesterday. Baylor aired it out as a bad defense we watched yesterday. They've got some things to figure out. Sawyer Robertson's a good player. They've got a good offense. Carson, that team we watched yesterday, that's an okay product to put on the field. It's not where you want to be ultimately, but it's not an unwatchable product. So we can stop piling on Mike Gundy now if you want to, but it was pretty obvious yesterday what had happened. Can't hear you.
I'm having a tough time here. Every time I put the stadium on, we couldn't hear you at all either. So I'll quit screwing around with all the graphics. Hopefully no more snafus. I think my stream dropped earlier. That was the issue. Just maybe a Wi-Fi issue. I won't call out the internet company that I use, but sometimes it can be spotty. But let's get back to the game though, Colby. Like first half, like you mentioned Sam Jackson, and he ended up throwing a touchdown pass. His first career touchdown pass at Oklahoma State before Zane Flores did. Zane Flores' numbers were not very good. His completion percentage way down. The ball looked really good coming out of Sam Jackson's hand. He was ripping it. And Doug Meacham did talk about him a lot, Sam Jackson, in the post game, and he mentioned that he's got real arm talent. Like coming out of high school, he was a highly touted quarterback recruit. And he basically just said, look, you got to like coach this guy less at quarterback because he hasn't been repping with the ones and twos all year. He's like, we don't need to coach him too hard on all the little intricacies. We just got to go let him play football. And I thought that was so refreshing to hear because he does bring an added element. And I do think every time I've watched the OSU offense in that Baylor game and really this whole season, it just seems like the drives typically stall when Zane Flores has to thread a pass somewhere on a third down. When it calls for Zane Flores to sit in the pocket, read a defense, and make a throw, that's typically where the drives can stall. Now, I'm not advocating that Zane Flores not play at all and just go straight to Sam Jackson. I do think there are periods of the game, like for instance, their drive to end the first half. I tweeted this. I was like, I would let Jackson run the rest of this series just to try to get at least in field goal range. Maybe he'll get a touchdown. Like to me, in certain spots, Colby, I think it would serve the offense better with all the motion they run behind him, all the different angles that a pass can come from. I mean, obviously, you keep Sam Jackson on the field with Zane Flores too. That brings that two quarterback element that I've always wanted teams to kind of use more in college football. But I just think that added element at times when the offense is stalling, you got to go to Jackson more, don't you?
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that a large part of what you do at quarterback over the next few weeks, and we'll see whether Haas Haney elects to come back or sit out the rest of the season. But it depends on how much you believe in Zane Flores and how much you think that you want to develop Zane Flores, because I do think he's still pretty young in his collegiate career. He's now run a real offense for exactly one game as a collegiate quarterback. He looked better yesterday than he did in the first three. There were still some mistakes, like you said. I mean, there were a couple plays in a row in the second quarter there where he tried to throw interceptions, had Gavin Freeman on a post over the middle of the field, threw it well behind him. Defensive back drops it. Very next play, third down, kind of gets panicked a little bit in the pocket, steps up to his right, throws it across the middle of the field. Linebacker hits him in the hands. He drops it. Yeah, so that was a couple of times in a row there in that second quarter where Zane tried to give the ball away, and he just doesn't look polished. I still think he's not playing with confidence. I think part of that could be just the rattling of the way his career started. I mean, the first 11 quarters of his career, UT Martin, Oregon, and Tulsa, was really bad. I do still want to give Zane a chance to develop and see what he looks like if he's playing in a real offense for a few weeks, for a month, 5-6 games, then see what Zane Flores looks like, see if maybe he turns into a really polished passer, starts playing with some confidence. I think the arm talent is there, but he's got to get better with some of these throws, especially down the field. He's got the arm talent, but like Terrell Davis over in the left side of the end zone in the third quarter, I mean, put that ball on the back pylon. Let him run underneath it. Underthrows it by a mile. You don't get the PI call. That's a wasted down. So, Sam Jackson looks really good. And, again, he just brings that element that defenses have to worry about, and it's a problem for defenses whenever the guy taking the snap runs a 4-4-5. Like, that's just a big problem. It allows Trent Howland, Rodney Fields to have more space to operate. You can even do some things, Carson. You can play Sam Jackson at running back next to Zane Flores. I mean, that gives the defense something to worry about. If Sam Jackson takes a toss, you have to set the edge so that he doesn't get the corner. You've got to make sure he can't cut up inside, because if there's a hole right there, he can hit the gap and find some space. And you still got to be in coverage on the back end. Like, there's a lot of things that you can do with Sam Jackson, and I think that Doug Meacham hopefully will get more creative, not less creative, as the season goes on with how to use him, because I don't think there's any reason that the Sam Jackson element should not be a real part of your offense, not a gimmicky little thing that you're pulling out occasionally throughout the course of a game.
Totally agree. To me, that brings an element that you need on offense, especially considering no real receivers have stepped up to be kind of a go-to target. Shamar Rigby had a big play there as well. But just overall, the Cowboys had 349 total yards of offense in the first half. That's their most in an opening half since they had 352 against TCU on November 13th, 2021. I mean, that says it all in terms of the creativity, because we would all agree that OSU's had a lot more talent on offense over since 2021 than they have this year. So that element really was effective. And of course, the second half was dominated by Baylor. Baylor's a good football team, like you mentioned. That adds the other element of why how impressive this offensive performance was in the first half, considering who you're playing. Now, is Baylor a great defense? No, but they have Dave Aranda on the other side, a very well-respected defensive coordinator. I think he leads the country in disguised defenses where they line up one way and then either blitz or drop in coverage, showing that they do the exact opposite of what they show. That's one of the more confusing defenses that Zane Flores and Sam Jackson will ever see. So that all of those elements combined with the total yardage in the first half to me was incredibly impressive from Doug Meacham. And what do you make of Doug Meacham moving forward? Like, if he continues to kind of revitalize the offense, and I loved him running off the field, like throwing his arms up in the air, doing more. He turned into Gordon Bombay during the game. He taught the offense how to fly, just more fun. Like, he's an OSU grad. His sideline interview during the game, he's like, I just love being here. It feels like home. Like, he's saying and doing all the right things to where whomever they next hire as the head coach, I think if Doug Meacham continues to hold this thing together and make OSU competitive, now the defense will have to do some do their part to make them competitive moving forward. But you get what I'm saying. Do you think this audition for Doug Meacham could land him a job on the next staff, and would you be in favor of that?
It was certainly a good start. It was a good debut for Doug Meacham in terms of trying out for his next job. Whoever Oklahoma State hires, you and I both think it'll be Zack Robinson. Zack, I'm sure, knows Doug. He gave you some reasons yesterday to think that he can be a real offensive coordinator. Now, we'll see how the rest of the season goes. Film's going to get out. Teams are going to start to understand what's happening with Sam Jackson. I would imagine defenses will be a little bit more prepared for what Oklahoma State's going to throw at them in the future. If you continue to have success and this offense continues to thrive the rest of the season, he's got 2 more months to make his case. He's got 8 more games to make his case for why he should be employed in Stillwater next year. Now, he will not be the head coach. I got a text about that yesterday. I feel very confident in saying Doug Meacham is not going to be hired to be the next head coach at Oklahoma State. Quite frankly, his resume's not good enough. He doesn't fit the bill of what Oklahoma State's going to get. It is too big of a job to hire Doug Meacham. It just is. Love his energy yesterday. Love everything he brought to the table. Don't think that he is a contender in any way to be hired as the permanent head coach. But can he be on the staff as OC, passing game coordinator, quarterbacks coach, receivers coach, something along that lines? Yeah, absolutely. He should be considered. And maybe whoever they hire, whether that's Zach, whether that's Golish, whoever that may be, they're going to have to take a real look at Doug Meacham. But again, these next 2 months, he has an incomplete tryout right now. He's 1/9 of the way into his tryout. So, yeah, let's see how the next 2 months goes. If Oklahoma State lights it up on offense the next 2 months, he's going to get a real look. And if they light it up on offense the next 2 months, he should get a real look.
Totally. And look, I think any talk of him being the head coach, like you mentioned, that's not happening. Look, let's not get carried away in the moment here. Now, if you were to tell me he could coach, inside receivers and tight ends, which is what he did on Mike Gundy's first staff, then okay, we could talk about that, because yes, I'm sure him and Zach have a relationship of some kind. That long way to go from there, but I do think he's going to win over a lot of people in the administration with how he's done so far. Now, you mentioned it's a long way to go if the season just completely bottoms out and the trick plays stop working and they just get destroyed. Maybe not. But the fact he's an OSU grad and has really in 4 or 5 days has brought the team to a competitive level. I mean, this was a close game at halftime, and who would have predicted that based on what we had seen earlier in the year with the previous few games, which again, the reason they weren't more competitive was the defense as we transitioned to Todd Grantham. And look, supposedly, the word on the street is that Mike Gundy consulted a lot of coaches when he was making the hire defensive coordinator, and the word on the street is he consulted one Nick Saban, who had a relationship with Todd Grantham. He was on Nick Saban's staff in 2022 as an analyst. And my gosh, Colby, look, I think Nick Saban deserves 10, 15, 20% of that $1 million per year they're paying Todd Grantham, who, again, hadn't called plays in 4 years, was essentially demoted on the New Orleans Saints staff from D-line coach. Just a terrible hire. I mean, just absolutely horrendous hire. The wheel routes continue to just give him fits. And this doesn't look any better. In fact, it might look a little worse than Brian Nardo's defenses, because at least Brian Nardo, say what you want about him, he would make some adjustments at halftime to where they would at least be somewhat competitive in second halves. And I think Nardo had a lot working against him. Clearly, he wasn't allowed to run his defense, just like Casey Dunn wasn't allowed to run his offense, because he was a 3-down guy and they ended up running 4 down. So we don't have to rehash all of that. I'm just saying that Todd Grantham has proven to be a horrendous hire thus far.
Yeah, I mean, so far we're 4 games in, and it's been a disaster for Todd Grantham. 3 out of the 4, UT Martin, woohoo, FCS opponent. Let's get fat on the FCS opponent. We came out of week 1 feeling good, Carson. We did. We bit the cheese on the FCS opponent. Let's not do that anymore. 3 FBS games. We saw what happened in Eugene, 55 points. The defense gave up, a couple of pick sixes late in that game. 19-12. You lose to Tulsa yesterday. I didn't see the final of the Tulsa game yesterday. I don't even remember who they were playing, but they were down 31-14 early in the third quarter when I saw it scrolling across the bottom line. Tulsa, again, told y'all last week, love their coach's energy. Tulsa's not any good. And then this week against Baylor. Carson, that was the most casual 612 yards that Baylor put up yesterday on Oklahoma State, and so much of it looked so easy. I really thought right out of the gate that it might get ugly when they had that 3-play, 73-yard drive and just guys wide open in space. Now, the defense at time yesterday, they forced a couple of 3-and-outs. They looked certainly more competent than they looked in Eugene. They're not playing the caliber of opponent they were playing in Eugene, but the defense has been really, really bad, Carson, and I don't think the talent is that bad. These are guys who have been in the program. These are guys who've been around. I mean, that 23 defense that beat Oklahoma, like Dylan Smith's still on the field. Kel Smith is still on the field. Brian McCoy, he certainly looks like a good player. Wendell Gregory, he certainly looks like a good player. But like you said, the wheel routes, how about the little pop pass over the top that Baylor scored on 2 drives in a row, about 3 minutes apart? Sawyer Robertson just takes the snap. They bring a guy, they like ran him in between the center and the guard, and he just runs right past everybody, wide open into the end zone. Two drives in a row. I mean, are they allowed to have the tablets on the side? Is anybody talking to them whenever they go over there? It was the same formation. It was the same play. It was a different player, but it was the exact same play. It's been a disaster on the Grantham front. And, yeah, this, in hindsight, Carson, he was the defensive line coach for the New Orleans Saints who was on the verge of being fired. He would have been let go once they hired Kellen Moore. He was not going to stick around in New Orleans. I think we're 4 games in. Maybe he'll make me look silly as they start to play some worse offenses as the season goes along, because they're going to play a much worse offense next week in Arizona. They've got Houston and Cincinnati on the schedule. They've got K-State, UCF. There are bad offenses on the schedule, and I'm sure Oklahoma State's defense will look better as the season goes along and the offenses get worse. But right now, this certainly looks like a good old boys hire. It certainly looks like Big Mike talked to St. Nick, and he said, hey, hire my buddy Todd. And it's been a big problem through 4 games, because that game was winnable yesterday if the defense, I don't want to say had a pulse. Those guys are playing hard, but they're just totally out of position. Guys are running wide open in space.
Which leads me to my next question, and I don't have an answer. I hope maybe you do. If they wanted to fire Todd Grantham, who's making that call? Is it Chad Weiberg? Is it Doug Meacham? Is it Rob Glass? Is Rob Glass going to put him on the squat rack and make him do squats till he gets crushed by weights? I mean, and look, I don't advocate necessarily firing Todd Grantham. I mean, you're already down a head coach. Just firing your defensive coordinator, is that going to make the same difference it did for the offense? I don't know. But at a certain point, if you're the worst defense in the country again, which they were last year, do you make a change? Do you put Osborne, the D-line coach, in there with the headset? I don't know. Who even makes that call, Cole?
Boy, I don't know who makes that call. I'll nominate somebody. I'm going to nominate my buddy Donovan Woods. He was a great DC at John Marshall whenever Rashawn was coaching down there. They made a great team. I'm going to nominate Donovan Woods to come in as the midseason defensive coordinator and get them right on that side of the ball. I don't know. maybe when Mike Gundy came out after the Oregon game and said things are too complicated, he was talking about the offense. Maybe he meant the defense. Is it too complicated? Do they just need to line up in base and run zone on every play so that they can just cover a portion of the field? Is it the opposite? Do they just need to be in man so they know exactly who they're responsible for on every play? I mean, one of those wheel routes up the sideline, it's like, I don't know if it's a linebacker or a defensive back who was sitting out there, looked like cloud coverage, out covering the flats. Maybe there was supposed to be a safety behind him, or maybe he was supposed to chase up the sideline. But either way, he's just standing here like this, watching the guy run right by him, doesn't go with him, safety doesn't come over. I mean, it doesn't get any easier than that, especially for Sawyer Robertson, who delivers the ball on time, on target. So it's been a disaster on the Todd Grantham front. And Arizona, you've got to get after Arizona next week, and the defense has to perform. I want to look and see. Bear with me. Arizona's 3-1, but I don't think that they're putting up a lot of points against real opponents. Let's see. They put up 40 on Hawaii, 48 on Weber State. But against Kansas State at home, they won 23-17. And then yesterday in Ames, they lost 39-14. Not a high-powered offense. In that win against Kansas State, they had 412 total yards of offense in that game, 178 passing yards, running it a little bit better than they're passing it. So Arizona's not going to be nearly as good on that side of the ball as Baylor. That's a 2 o'clock game, by the way. Shout out to the football gods for not making us stay up until 1 a.m. to watch the Arizona game.
No kidding. I was nervous about that. Yeah, they had 360 yards against Iowa State. So, yeah, I mean, that's a fair point, too. I'll cut Todd Grantham a little bit of slack on that. I mean, Baylor is we knew that coming into the game. They're a really good offense with a really good quarterback. Now, 612 yards is inexcusable. I don't care who you're playing. That's a joke. But you're right in that the offenses will get a lot more easy to defend. So maybe that's a silver lining for the defense and Todd Grantham. But don't know. I mean, we'll have to see if the defense can improve at all in that time. But overall, though, Colby, I mean, again, it was just nice to have Oklahoma State football back again. I mean, that just felt like an OSU style football game. So, and also, too, maybe to me, it's inexplicable that, the Zane Flores Haas Haney competition was as close as I and many others heard, and that Flores looked really good against what now we know is the OSU defense. Maybe that's why the quarterback battle was so close between Haas Haney and Zane Flores, because they were playing against air. I don't know, but Zane Flores to me has not been impressive. And look, I understand he hasn't got a ton of help from his receivers. I understand the situations he was put in before the Baylor game offensively. But at a certain point, Colby, you got to show us something, right? I mean, he did have that touchdown run taken away. I thought that was a very weak holding call. I mean, he basically just threw the guy to the ground. They were both jostling for position. It was almost like a wrestling, not a takedown, because that would be certainly a hold. It was more of a leverage situation where he pancaked the guy than a hold, which took away a really good run from Zane Flores where he hurdled the guy on his way to the end zone. So Zane had some nice moments. But you just look at his overall line, Colby, and it leaves a lot to be desired. And I don't know. I think that's another reason for optimism for me is what I'm getting at, that if Haas Haney can come back by October, mid to late October, whenever the timeline is now, maybe OSU could reel off some wins here with him at the helm. I mean, you put him in there with Meechum, and that's certainly what Mike Gundy envisioned when he hired Meechum and brought in Haas Haney. But I guess to wrap it up in my thought here is Zane Flores is not impressed. Sam Jackson has. And that element with Haas Haney coming back, that gives me a lot of optimism for the season moving forward.
Yeah, me too. Carson, you want to talk about a nightmare for an opposing defense. How about Haas Haney taking the snap with Sam Jackson standing to his right and Trent Howland standing to his left? I mean, that's something that you don't want to see if you're an opposing defense. The number of things that Oklahoma State could do with Haas Haney back there. I don't think Zane's been real impressive so far. He just – I don't know how much of it is he was so rattled, I think, by what happened in Eugene. I really do. I think yesterday was the first time that we got to see him stand in the pocket a little bit, make some throws. It wasn't great. I still want to give him a little bit of time. I still think that he was really set up to fail right out of the gate with the Gundy offense that Oklahoma State ran in the non-conference. Yesterday in the Meechum offense, again, not great, but I think that you at least have a chance to evaluate him now, and I don't know that we can evaluate him totally based on one game, because I think you have to throw out the non-con. The non-con was just, it wasn't a real offense. He was set up to fail. I believe that through and through. So I don't want to totally evaluate him on one game, but if Haas is available mid-October, I'll be prepared to evaluate him on 3 games. You better believe that. So I would like to see some good things from Zane over these next couple of games. And again, I think that Meechum can do some things to make his life easier in that aspect, like he did yesterday. He was trying to make his life easier yesterday, and I think that he'll continue to do that. So hopefully we will see continued development from Zane now that he's going to actually have a chance to run a real offense without just playing in such a phone booth. Pistols Firing Podcast is brought to you by Brewster Consulting Group. Do any of these sound familiar at your company? Processes that are manual and inefficient with no documentation, data reporting taking forever, it's inaccurate. We hear all the hype about AI, but no clue what it actually means for your business. Projects always run over time and over budget. If so, talk with our good friends at Brewster Consulting Group. They help build organizations that run like well-oiled machines with clear processes, reliable data and reporting, and technology that actually works for you. Their team of seasoned data engineers have delivered solutions that are built to last for local clients like the Tulsa International Airport and Medify. They've also delivered solutions for large international enterprises like DP World. Even better, they are founded and run by a proud Oklahoma State alum and season ticket holder. Learn more about them at www.brewsterconsulting.com or learn more about their methodologies by connecting with them at Brewster Consulting Group on LinkedIn or YouTube.
Great job. I could actually hear that on the output there on the stream. So people did get to hear that excellent ad read by you. Any remaining thoughts from the game, Colby? I did have one more point on Mike Gundy.
Hope, optimism are my remaining thoughts about the game yesterday. I'm now hopeful and optimistic that, Carson, we're not the worst team in the country. We're not the worst team in the Power Four. We wouldn't be the 11th best team in the Sun Belt, as the Sagarin rankings would have had you believe after the non-conference. I mean, the analytics, everything that we were seeing about Oklahoma State was just so demoralizing and, frankly, embarrassing, Carson. So hope and optimism is what I took away from yesterday. Big testament to Doug Meacham and what he was able to accomplish in 4 days. And a big testament to the 19, 20, and 21-year-olds who went out. And, again, they didn't win the game, but they put a lot of that into implementation yesterday on that field. So everyone who had a part in especially that first half yesterday, I know they got ran away from a little bit late in that game, but big time stuff from everybody who gave the fan base something to believe in. And for me personally, Carson, they gave me a reason to get back to Boone Pickens Stadium later this season.
Totally agree. That was a lot of reason for optimism coming out of that game. And I did want to ask you about Hartley Dykes going into the Ring of Honor. I wasn't in the stadium, so I need to get your full report on that. But first, let's hear from Wolf Corporation. Looking to sell or lease commercial property? Turn to Wolf Corporation, Oklahoma's trusted commercial real estate listing brokerage since 2010. Our experienced team specializes in showcasing your retail office or industrial space to the right buyers and tenants across the state. You can go to their website and see what listings they currently have here. They're based right here in Oklahoma. They deliver results with local expertise. Visit them at Wolf Corporation. That's WULF Corporation.com or call 405-308-3480 today and go Pokes. So, Colby, how was the Hartley Dykes Ring of Honor thing? I didn't get to see it. They didn't really show it, I don't think, on the broadcast that I saw. So was there a good ovation for him? It was a good crowd. I think it was listed at 45,000, capacity 52, something like that. It thinned out as the crowd, the sun, you can see wherever the sun was in the stadium really filtered out as the game went on. I think the sun was beating people down, but how was it inside the stadium?
Yeah, so I wasn't able to go yesterday. We had my in-laws in town. We had a balloon festival with Kiddo. That was a whole ordeal getting her to sleep at 11 o'clock last night. But I did get a report back. My family was there. My mom and dad, my sister, they were all there. And they said it was really cool seeing Hartley go in. Said Barry showed up for him. They showed Barry on the broadcast. So, yeah, I'm sure it was great having them in town, and I'm sure they were pleased with what they saw from Doug Meacham, who, by the way, Mike Gundy's offensive lineman, also Barry Sanders' offensive lineman. Also gave Mike Gundy some time to throw the ball to Hartley Dykes. So I'm sure that was really cool. And I bet Doug Meacham, Barry Sanders, and Hartley Dykes all kind of had a moment yesterday where they just appreciated everything that Oklahoma State has given to them. And Hartley Dykes, Carson, I've told you, we had him on this podcast a couple of years ago. I met him at Gallagher-Iba Arena. I shook his hand, and it was, again, unbelievable. Him and Des Bryant are the two people in my life who I've shaken their hands, and I've thought, oh my God, I'm not a big guy, but that's not normal. Like, that is just simply not normal. What just absolutely engulfed my hand. It was like the goalie gloves that they wear in soccer. Just unbelievably massive hands on Hartley Dykes. You can see why he was such a stud. And who knows, had injuries not gotten him in the pros, he might have been a Hall of Famer at that level, more so than just what he did in college. So congratulations to Hartley Dykes. Big honor. And friend of the show, Hartley Dykes. So, yeah, that's awesome for him.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Certainly deserving. The olds would take him over any receiver. Blackman, Rashawn, Dez, the olds would take Lee, and that might be true, considering that offense was so ahead of its time in 1988 with Gundy and Sanders and those guys. Like the amount of yards and points they put up was like an offense today. But you got to think even with the schemes they had back then, pale in comparison in terms of getting a receiver open that they do today. So congrats to Hartley, very well deserved. I did want to mention one more thing on Zack. There's a national report out, but first, I had one more thought on Mike Gundy. Is it strange to you that he's put nothing out in terms of a statement, even like a short, brief thank you to the fans? He's put out nothing on Twitter or anywhere just since the firing. Which, look, I'm not sitting here saying it's a crime he hasn't done that, or I'm outraged or anything. I just think it's kind of weird that can't even put out just a quick, hey, thanks to the fans, things of that nature. But he did update his bio and his picture and everything on Twitter. And I don't know, that strikes me as strange. I don't mean to compare Mike Gundy to Kevin Durant at all. I'm not saying these situations are similar, nothing like that. I just think it's such low-hanging, easy fruit. Like when Kevin made his decision just to put out a 2-sentence thing thanking fans and move on down the road, and it's very surface. It's more symbolic than anything. It's almost like checking a box when you move on. I just found that kind of strange that he's put out nothing. Did you?
So it's so funny that you brought up Kevin Durant. We're starting to have mind meld after doing this pod for so long together. I was going to bring up Kevin Durant and say something similar. Not the same situation, but like you said, it's the easiest thing in the world to just put out a quick little statement. Thank you so much. Love you all. And Carson, you called it weird. You call it strange. I'll go a step further. It's weak. It's weak, and it comes across as bitter to me. I told you on Tuesday night that I thought the next day we would have a statement from Mike Gundy because he spent more than half of his life at that university, and I know that I'm criticizing him today, and I know that I've done it for the better part of the last year, and I know a lot of other people have too. But we've also shown Mike Gundy a lot of love over the years. And when things got bad, yes, things maybe got a little bit toxic. I'm sure he didn't appreciate the way that he was talked about, whether it be in the media, social media, the fan base, the students chanting Fire Gundy as he walked into the locker room at halftime of his last game at head coach. But he was there for 20 years. A lot of good times, a lot of memories, a lot of love between that fan base and Mike Gundy. Love that I do think will return at some point. But, I think it's very weak, and I think it comes across as bitter, sour grapes that he hasn't put anything out yet. It's the easiest thing in the world. 4 or 5 sentences. Just send out a tweet, a statement. Put it on letterhead if you want. Don't. Just send it out in the notes app if you want to. Something, anything. Carson, I told you on Tuesday, I was sure he would put out a statement. I'm shocked he hasn't. That's kind of where I stand on it. Put something out, man. Let us know. Let us know you're there. Let us know that there's still love in your heart for Oklahoma State, because I think there's still love in a lot of our hearts for Mike Gundy, and I hope that at some point, again, I want him on the field leading the chant. I want him up in the box with the camera cutting to him as he cheers when we score a touchdown. Like, he's earned that. I think that should be something that should be happening 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And I don't know. Things just seem like they're in a really bad place right now between the university, the fans, and Mike Gundy.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to put it. And look, it's his prerogative. He can put that out in a week or two or whenever he feels like it. That's his prerogative. I do think it kind of appears bitter in a sense when you look at it that way. But anyway, there's a national report by Ian Rappaport from the NFL Network naming Zack Robinson as on the I think he termed it very short list for the new head coaching job at Oklahoma State. To which, if you read the replies, there's Atlanta Falcons pack his bags for him, things like that. So he's under a little bit of heat from the Atlanta fans after getting shut out. But I do think it's interesting now that the national media is starting to hear what's been going on since last December. I think I read the report too, Colby. Ian Rappaport basically confirmed what I reported last December, that if they didn't work things out with Mike Gundy, he would have been the head coach, Zack Robinson. So that's another national person confirming what I reported last December, and nothing's changed my mind on that. Now, I do think Chad Weiberg's he's going to interview a lot of people. He's going to reach out to a lot of people to make sure he has the right guy. I don't think he's just going to pick Zack Robinson and not talk to anybody. That he confirmed the searching firm, did Ian Rappaport that OSU will be using. So they're going to use a search firm. They're going to talk to all the top candidates. And if that ends up being Zack Robinson, okay. But he did confirm what I reported last December.
Yeah, Carson, and we think he's going to be on the short list of candidates. We've known that he's going to be on the short list of candidates. And when the time comes, if he does get the job, I think we'll have a very interesting conversation about whether he should be the CEO or the play caller. In this story that I just pulled up about it, this is a Sports Talk ATL story. And I just thought I'd read this just to give the counterpoint of what Zack's offense has looked like in Atlanta. It says, at this point, most Falcon fans would gladly help Robinson pack his bags and drive him to the airport if Oklahoma State comes calling. Atlanta's coming off an embarrassing offensive performance. The Falcons rank 31st in points per game, and the eye test isn't much kinder. Robinson's scheme has been painfully predictable, often telegraphing whether it's going to be a run or pass based on formation. They're extremely run-heavy when they're under center. They're extremely pass-heavy when they're in shotgun. And they're one of the lowest rates in the NFL in terms of using play action. So, yeah, things have not gone as they expected them to in Atlanta for Zack. I say all that to say that I am still Team Zack Robinson because I've told everyone, college football, it's a crowd-funded sport. It's about squeezing out every dollar. And despite what I just read to you, despite what the score was against Carolina last week, he did have a Kirk Cousins who an injury cost him his arm last season. Michael Penix this year, we don't know if he's good. There are some questions around the talent that he's using. The scheme, all that stuff, we can get into more if he's hired. But I still think he would squeeze out every dollar, and I still think that he's a very bright guy who would understand what he needed to do play-calling-wise to improve at the collegiate level, or if he needed to be the CEO and let someone else call the plays and run their own offense. So, I'm still Team Zack, but look, there are going to be some great candidates out there, and like you said, there is no scenario in which Chad Weiberg is going to call Zack, say, hey, man, Mike's gone, you want the job? That is not how this is going to go. There are going to be serious discussions about a lot of candidates. Chad is going to hire the most qualified with the best plan, who's going to best be able to squeeze out every dollar and give Oklahoma State the chance to field a team that can compete year in and year out in the Big 12. If it's Zack, I will support that hire. I will cheer that hire. If it's someone else, we can dive into that. We've already talked about some names, and we can decide where to go from there. But, Zack is obviously on the short list of candidates for this job.
And yeah, I mean, he certainly due some criticism for how they perform, but I'm going to cut him some slack in that what you just mentioned about Kirk Cousins. Like last year with Kirk Cousins, they were 6th in the NFL in offense. They led the NFL, I believe, in pass rate over expectation. Like he was doing a great job when he had a quarterback. This Michael Penix thing, he didn't choose to draft Michael Penix in the top 10 or top 12 NFL draft. I know Cousins had the injury you mentioned, but it's not like he forgot how to call plays. And the fact is they've had a bunch of delay of game penalties last few times out, and that's where that quote that's just run the gamut on social media about Zack saying he's to simplify things. That's code for my quarterback isn't getting the play called and set up on time. Like maybe he's not getting the play call into the huddle in time, and that would be a criticism of Zack maybe, but it's not like he's simplifying his offense. He says they need to simplify what his players are capable of pulling off because they're not even capable of breaking the huddle and getting lined up and snapping the ball in time. So that's how he's taking it down to the studs. But in the NFL, like, you're as good as your quarterback. Just like in a certain sense, college can be that way too. So look, I'm not saying Zach's blameless, but Michael Penix just has not been as effective as Kirk Cousins. It's really simple as that for me.
Yeah, I also think it's dangerous for people to sit here and look at a 3-game sample size and say, yeah, that guy shouldn't lead Oklahoma State. Like that's a dangerous game that we're playing here. They played 3 games in the NFL. By the way, Michael Penix's first 3 games. Maybe he played a game or 2 at the end of December last year. I don't remember. But Michael Penix's first 3 games in his first real season as starter with real expectations. Yes, it has not gone well. We're 3 games in. Let's see how it develops throughout the season. Again, there's no guarantee that if Zach comes to Oklahoma State, that he would be the play caller, that he would insist on being the coordinator. There's no guarantee that that would be the case. If it is, I would hope that he would run an innovative offense with, play action, motion, all those different things. But if he's not, then I think he would trust whoever he chooses to do that job. So, I'm still in the Zach camp because I believe the money is the most important thing. I think he'll get all of it. I think he'd be a great recruiter, young, hungry, and the parallels are there between the success Mike Gundy had as the quarterback and what Zack Robinson could come in and do. I don't mind being a stepping stone because that means that you're having a ton of success, but you could probably have all that success with Zach and not have him leave. So if it works and if you hit, it could hit for 20, 25 years. So, yeah, for all those reasons, I'm pro Zach. Let's not overreact to 3 games. Let's see how things go with the Falcons, and let's not disqualify him because of what they may or may not be doing offensively in Atlanta with what may or may not be a good quarterback or a good offense.
And we got to stop with the stepping stone job concerns as a fan base. I'm talking about the whole fan base. Like, as Chad said, this is not 1980s Oklahoma State. This is not 1990s Oklahoma State. This is not early 2000s Oklahoma State. Because the whole stepping stone thing is just so short-sighted. And again, we don't have to rehash the fact that if you're winning and somebody comes and hires your head coach, okay, great, we'll go hire the next guy because that means he's winning a lot. But I do think things have changed in the NIL era in terms of the job statuses have changed. Like, Alabama is not the same job it was pre-NIL. They don't have as much money as Oregon. Like, that never, like, there's a reason Dan Lanning didn't take the Alabama job because he understood that. And so the job shifting and stepping stones, to me, that whole structure is gone. You can't worry about, well, what if he leaves? Well, so what? That means you're winning a ton that another school wanted to hire your coach, and you go on down the road. And I do think from that side of things, people got to quit worrying about that. Like, let's be competitive in the Big 12 and then worry about someone coming and poaching our coach, right?
Yeah, make the best hire, go win as many games as you can. The future's unpredictable. There's no guarantee that whoever you hire is going to be a success. There's no guarantee that whoever you hire is going to be a failure. Hire the best candidate, give them all the resources to go be successful. Deal with whatever happens down the road. That's all good by me. So, anyway, I before we get out of here, I do want to talk Victor Hovland at some point. So, I'm not sure if you have anything more on football.
No, I'm good. What do you have on Victor? He's hurt, right?
Yeah, he's not playing today. It's a huge bummer. He neck injury. I don't know if he injured his neck fist pumping yesterday whenever he rolled in that 15-footer on 17 to basically seal the Americans' fate. Just an absolute filthy moment for Victor Hovland. I can't imagine the adrenaline that was pumping through his veins in that moment. But then he was supposed to play in the best ball yesterday afternoon, withdrew because of a neck injury, and then he's not able to play today either. So that's a huge bummer for Vic to not get to play singles in what's going to be a historic route for the Europeans. But what's interesting, Carson, is in the event of a withdrawal, both captains have to put a name in an envelope prior to the start of the event. And if someone has to withdraw, you open that envelope, you see who doesn't get to play for the other side. So the name in that envelope was Harris English. So Harris English will not play today. And the substitution rule in the Ryder Cup, it does not make that a forfeit for Victor Hovland. It actually makes that a draw. So that's a half point for Europe before they even tee it up today, which pretty wild rule that I was unfamiliar with.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk about that leading up that I read, and I didn't know about the envelope rule until I read that. It's a very awkward, like, this Ryder Cup could not be going any worse for the United States and not any worse for Keegan Bradley, who I thought has done a just horrendous job with his pairings. I mean, running Harris English and Morikawa back out there when they were according to the data, they were the worst possible combination any team could have put out there. Out of 132 possible combinations, the data said they were 132. And then they doubled down and put them back out against Rory and Fleetwood and got boat raced again. The U.S., I don't know who, I know it's the PGA of America, but whoever's deciding not only just the captain, but also the setup has hurt the Americans almost as much as the captain and his selections, because USA actually has been better tee to green, strokes gained wise. They've actually hit the ball better. And it hasn't mattered because of how soft the golf course is. If you just watch that John Rahm, Terrell Hatton pairing, they couldn't hit a green and just got up and down from everywhere. Rahm had that unbelievable chip in from the rough. But it hasn't mattered that U.S. has hit the ball better due to the U.S. setting up the course the way they did. They turned it into a putting contest to where hitting greens didn't really matter that much. And it just, whoever's in charge needs to go. They got to go, because they're not doing all the things that Europe is doing with data, the statistics. They pair Scotty Scheffler together with Russell Henley, which I advocated for. They crushed it together at the President's Cup. Everyone knew they were going to be partnered together. And then, I know two thumbs down, Colby, but they put Scotty on the even holes and Russell on the odd. You put your longer hitter on the odd. Like, the Europeans supposedly couldn't believe they flip-flopped that. And then, of course, when Henley and Scheffler played again, they corrected that. It's been a disaster from every single decision they could have possibly made. Doesn't play Cameron Young first session. He's been your best golfer. JJ Spawn was second in the points and didn't hardly play. He played, two matches? He's been one of the best ball strikers in the world coming into this. They don't play their best guys. They play the wrong combo. Morikawa probably shouldn't have been on the team. It's been a complete and utter disaster. And I hope Europe puts up 20 points on the board, just blows them off the map, a la maybe an OSU Tulsa situation where there's real change for the U.S. team.
Yeah, it was the absolute biggest nightmare scenario in every possible situation. When the initial pairings came out Thursday night for what we would see Friday, I had one thought: Morikawa and English are going to get killed. What are we doing with Morikawa and English? Morikawa should not have been on the team. Keegan Bradley should have picked himself. He was trying to be selfless, and he made a bad decision in doing so. Colin Morikawa had no business on this team. I understand Russell Henley and Scotty Scheffler were a good pairing at the President's Cup. Russell Henley at Bethpage Black giving up 30 and 40 yards off the tee to all of his opponents. I thought that you put Scotty in a bad situation there, and the course setup is such a joke. I would have thought the Europeans set up the course. It's unbelievable the way they turned it into, like you said, a putting contest, and the Europeans are rolling it in from everywhere. I had forgotten how flat the greens are at Bethpage Black. Xander Schauffele, he appears to not care about the Ryder Cup any little bit at all. He's played twice since the Open Championship, which was in July. He's leaving every putt short for 2 days. Just terrible golf. The Morikawa English pairing again on day 2, indefensible. I think running Henley out on day 2. If you want to say day 1, they were good at the President's Cup, so be it. Again on day 2, indefensible. It just no energy. The Europeans clearly love each other. I thought the American crowd yesterday afternoon, they know that it's an absolute beatdown, and so then they're just trying to, take shots and go viral with stuff that's totally over the line, directed at Rory, to the point where they had to send out an increased police presence to line the tee boxes and stuff because people were getting so aggressive toward Rory and Shane. It just, as bad as the USA could be represented in every facet in this Ryder Cup is how the USA has been representative. And I agree. Something needs to change. I hope Europe wins every single match today. I hope it's the most historic beatdown that's ever possible in the history of the Ryder Cup. This has been embarrassing to watch the last couple of days. And Carson, I said I might have to wheel a fourth TV in today. I'm not going to have to wheel a fourth TV in today. I'm going to have football on all three. The Ryder Cup's over.
There we go. My mouse quit working. Yeah, it's over. It hasn't even been entertaining. It's just been a total slog, and I don't have any more thoughts on it. I actually got to get out of here, Colby. Appreciate you joining me. Appreciate Doug Meacham rallying the troops and running a real offense. And who knows? This could be a fun exercise moving forward. We'll see. The schedule is going to lighten up a little bit here before we get to the really tough stretch. And We'll be here every step of the way, Colby. Appreciate you joining us, and we'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, absolutely. I know one thing. I'm excited to watch Oklahoma State play next week, and I haven't felt that way in a while. So I'm looking forward to the Arizona game next Saturday. We'll be back later in the week to preview that. Appreciate everyone joining us. As always, go Pokes.
We are back at it.
You expect to not get your teeth kicked in on your home field like
This is not the 1980s OSU.
Zack Robinson, a lot of time going deep for Des Bryant.